Live from Djerber, this is the Locktoon Podcast. I'm Amy.
And I'm Mel.
Today we're covering chapters 17 and 18 of Nona the Ninth by Tamsyn Muir. This begins day 4, and day 4 is absolutely wild, so there's a lot to unpick here. We really move away from the breakfast and found family situation into a lot of just extreme violence really, really quickly.
Yeah, this is fun. We get an action-packed 2 chapters here that we're going to cover. Before we dive in, just a quick shout out. If you want to support artists in the Locktoon fan community, you can always check out our Locktoon Creator Hub at locktoonpod.com/fanmerch. And as always, if you want to support Amy and I here at the pod, you can find stickers, pins, magnets, custom greeting cards. I personally ship everything out myself. Some of you know we just had a baby, so I'm a little bit behind. So if you're still waiting for yours, don't worry, have no fear. It will get to you. But thank you all for your support. We really appreciate it.
Yeah, speaking of, Mel, you have a new human child. How's that going?
I do have an actual human child that it's going great. You know, the first 6 weeks we barely slept. And I feel like I entered into a totally different dimension of life. But yeah, it's been great. It's really cool to see a little baby learn about its body. And, you know, I'm just like super in love with this kiddo. Which, by the way, I did want to share the name with folks because I know some people were wondering. But we named her River after the one and only River in the Locktoon series. No, I'm just kidding. We actually didn't name it after the Locktoon, but I secretly knew that was happening. My partner didn't really know. My partner has no idea anything about the Locktoon series and has no idea of the River's significance.
I think your baby will be a much more pleasant version of River.
Yeah, I really do hope so. There might be phases, but you know.
Yeah, only as a teenager will she be filled with vengeful ghosts.
Totally, that angst, that teenage angst. But yeah, what have you been up to?
Well, I didn't have any babies, but I moved. I left the city, and yeah, I mean, that's really it, but it was a lot of work. So thank you guys so much for your patience because we've been kind of like on and off this whole year really with getting episodes out. But that's because we are just human beings living our lives.
Yes, it's a season of transitions and change for us and probably for a lot of people. Now that we're in 2023, summertime, we're kind of in our post-ish, not really pandemic era, but at least a different phase, we'll say, of the pandemic. So a lot of change for people.
Yeah.
So, Amy, I have a question for you before we dive in.
Wow, I've been so ready for this. Tell me.
I want to preface this by saying, like, I'm rusty, y'all. I have a new baby. I'm looking for some grace here. But my question is, Lady Gaga performed for the second house, and she switched up one of her songs, especially for that performance. Do you know what one it was?
I have no idea.
It's called Bad Necromance, and it goes like this. Peer rah rah, ooh la la, want your necromance. That's it. That's all I got.
Oh my god. I honestly should have gotten that one. Can't have necromancy without romance.
No, that is for sure. And then I did want to call out Zach Jabal built on the cocktail joke that we told. Was it last episode? Maybe it was a couple episodes ago. And Zach says, okay, I'm sorry, but the cocktail of the 9 houses is definitely the corpse reviver, which I imagine is very hilarious for anyone who knows what a corpse reviver is, which I did not because I am a wine drinker and don't drink cocktails. But very hilarious if you are familiar with that drink. But a corpse reviver is a family of cocktails. The reason it's named this is because the strength of the drink is enough to bring the body back from the grave.
Wow, Jesus. It reminds me of our early 20s.
Yes. Gin sour cocktail. It's a mixed drink made with liquor, citrus, and sweetener. It's kind of similar to a margarita.
Oh my God.
I think there's like absinthe in it. Anyway,
Let's
thanks,
go.
Zach, for that quick little lesson in cocktails. Because, yes, Corpse Reviver would have been an excellent answer to my last joke if I had known what that was.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, people have really been coming through. We've been getting a lot of jokes in the inbox and a couple on Twitter, and I have really tried my best not to read them. But sometimes I am a little bit quick on the draw and I just open the email and
Bada bing, bada boom.
yeah.
What are you going to do?
All right, well, let's just jump in. We're a little rusty because we haven't recorded since like freaking ever.
Yeah, it's been a while. It's been more than 2 months. We are glad to be back.
So glad to be back. And we're glad to be starting with day 4 because day 4 is, I mean, we've said this the last couple of episodes, but like this is where shit really goes down in that, you know, Nona gets shot like a billion times. And the opening day 4, act 4 page lists, as always, the things that happen in this day. They go, where is Pyrrha? The gang swears an oath. The angel makes a call. Hot sauce draws her gun. 48 hours until the tomb opens. And actually, I've just realized that everything in this list happens in these 2 chapters.
Yeah. So if you'll recall where we left off with Nona is that Pyrrha has gone missing. So if you'll remember, Nona kind of comes in. Cam thinks that Pyrrha was with Nona, but she wasn't. And so where is Pyrrha? That's the big question right now.
Right. And I think that last episode we said that surprisingly we didn't get a play-by-play of Nona going to sleep as we usually do. But we actually do get a play-by-play here at the beginning of day 4. We get a little flashback to the last night. And last night was the night after she and Hot Sauce went to see the broadcast. And she came home to find that Pyrrha was gone. So Pal is furiously taking notes. They're trying to figure it out. And he tells Nona that Pyrrha left a full hour before they got any news of the broadcast at all. So I guess Pyrrha left her guns at home. And it seems that there was sort of a split-second decision on Pyrrha's part to go off and do something. There are a couple moments where Nona almost tells Pal about the broadcast, that she went to see it, but then doesn't. And Pal seems to think that Pyrrha went to try and commandeer the shuttle that the lictor landed on.
Yeah, because if you'll recall from very early on in the book, Pyrrha just wants to get them off this planet and go live happily ever after together. And so I think when Nona says something about the shuttle, it kind of like a light bulb goes off for Pal. Like, oh shit, Pyrrha went after the shuttle. What I love about this is that Palamades at no point seems to suspect any level of betrayal from Pyrrha.
Right. So Nona wakes up. No one is there. This is the first time that she can remember where Cam isn't there to start the recorder and record her dreams. But thankfully, Cam is in the kitchen. She's making breakfast and doing the dishes. So she comes in and tells Nona to record her dreams herself. But Nona can't figure out how to use the recorder and ends up overhearing a taped conversation between Camilla and Palamades instead, which is heart-wrenching.
It is heart-wrenching and it is so informative. This is exactly the kind of writing that we expect from Tamsyn. This is like how we get our information is in these little dialogues between people. These books are so well written because you can just get this broken short dialogue and put together so much of what's going on in the story. So this was really fun.
Right. And it starts with them saying that Pal is saying on the recording, it's Harrow Hark they want, or at least it's Harrow that we suffer wants. I don't think Mervwing and the Hopers want Harrow at all, or at least they're not holding out for her. Everything comes back to the tomb, Cam. And I was a little confused about this because I didn't know that We Suffer knew so much about the tomb. And even if she did, besides Harrow being from the Ninth House, why would she want Harrow to open the tomb? Is she trying to... Is all of this just about opening the tomb?
I'm pretty sure all of this is about opening the tomb. And I'm curious what our listeners think about this. But my take, I like reread this. I reread this so many times because, and then I was recalling that we suffer when, I think a few chapters back, when they're debating why Blood of Eden wants a lictor. And I think Palamades is like, you know, lictors never really did anything for you. And We Suffer says, yeah, they have, and goes through the list of all the intel they've gathered from lictors that they've worked with over the years. It seems to me that they are actually familiar with Mercy Moore and Augustine and Wake's plan in some way. And even Wake didn't actually know the details, that it was like Jod's baby, that it was Jod's biological child that needed to open the tomb. I think that Wake just thought they were doing some sort of like kill a baby so that there's like this Thanergy explosion or something. I totally remember, but she didn't have all the information. And I think it's curious here that these folks are really hooked on Harrow unless they know that Harrow and Gideon were like a duo, which they might actually know that because it's because of Crown. Like it's possible that Crown has given them a lot of intelligence as well. And so I don't know that they have all of the information, but I do think that this is just a continuation of what they thought was the like original plan of Wake, Augustine, and Mercy.
Right. I think Merwing thinks they just want a lictor, but I think We Suffer, yes, specifically wants Harrowhark, not just a lictor, not just any lictor. But Merwing, I think, would be fine with any lictor. I'm not entirely sure why, as a bargaining chip. Anyway, but I also had this question about something Pal says to Cam a couple lines later. First of all, they're like telling each other how much they miss each other, which is brutal. And then Pal says to Cam, I have spent 3/4 of my life telling you what you already knew and 1/6 telling you what you didn't. And I'm probably just like over analyzing this in a big way. But I was just like, Cam is like, what, 22 now? 1/6 of her life would be like 3.5 years. I was just like, I thought he meant like just the time since Canaan House, but it's more than that. I don't really know what this means, or if it just means in general, he's decided that Cam knows what he's saying 3/4 of the time, and 1/6 of the time he's
like adding, he's like contributing something unique. I think all this means is Palamades is like, I don't actually bring as much value. And this is like, as the conversation continues, it's like, I don't actually bring value to you by just existing in your life. And Camilla like wholeheartedly disagrees with that. And this back and forth is really interesting because it is this really, they love each other. It's so clear that they love each other. And I think at one point, Palamades says, you know that I adore you, scholar. And Camilla says, indubitably, Warden. And the way that Moira Quirk reads it is like, kind of like in this like sort of sexy way, which I don't know if that's how it is meant to be read. But it is like a really intimate moment that we get to witness through Nona's eyes. And it's clear that Nona's very uncomfortable witnessing this, and it makes at least me uncomfortable reading it as well. I feel like I'm intruding on something.
Yeah, it's a very intimate and romantic conversation. You can have romance without it being sexual. As we talked about the Homestuck idea of Moirails.
Right.
And then following up with that, we actually get a really great moment of foreshadowing for Paul. Pal says, have you thought about what it means if Nona's actually a completed merger, one that we'll never be able to unpick, a successful soul gestalt? And Cam says, lucky them. So you can see here one big hint that this is exactly what's going to happen to Pal and Cam.
Yeah.
Cam also says love and freedom don't coexist. This whole conversation is just a doozy.
Yeah. It like gives me goosebumps just like just talking about it. And it's especially awkward because Camilla kind of walks in on Nona listening to this. I think right after the recording cuts off and it's an old recording of Nona.
Mm-hmm.
And that's when at least Nona notices that Cam is standing in the doorway, but it's possible that Cam was standing in the doorway a lot longer.
Right.
And then, they go eat breakfast.
They go eat breakfast. Is this our last breakfast of the
I think this
of the book?
might be their last. Yeah, I think so.
Okay, well, keep an eye out. This might be our last breakfast. Ding, ding, ding. They eat a pottle of something. I don't know what that is. And they're talking, and Cam says they're going to go look for Pyrrha at the spaceport, and she's going to take Nona with her. So Nona's very surprised by this, but then she asks Cam to take her to school just to say sort of goodbye to her friends. And Cam agrees, but says it'll probably be the last time, which is sad.
It is very sad.
Before they leave, Cam goes to, I think, wash up, and Nona opens the window and looks at Varun and asks for help. And Varun is just making this like yearning, moaning noise, presumably for Nona. And then Nona is like, that's fine if you can't help. Just don't do anything weird. I have enough to deal with. Which I just think is funny. And then Cam and Nona leave. And as they're leaving, we see that there's a lot of activity in the building. People are loading up trucks outside with supplies. As we've talked about, this is a Blood of Eden safe house, and they probably have a bunch of storage for, weapons or whatever. They're going to war, so they're starting to prepare for that.
Yeah, it is go time for Blood of Eden right now.
Yep.
And I'm actually kind of surprised that Cam and Palamades are okay with taking Nona to school right now. But even in this insanely urgent moment where they need to find Pyrrha, they are still doing these human things like, oh, Nona wants to say goodbye to her friends. We're going to do that.
Right.
And it's nice. They're always like making space in a way that I feel like a lot of people don't, especially in a moment like this. But they get to school. Honesty, Beautiful Ruby, and Kevin are there already. And it's kind of funny because I think it's Beautiful Ruby that asks Nona how the broadcast was. And she kind of like cuts Beautiful Ruby off and is like, Cam doesn't know.
Yeah.
And I'm imagining this going down and Cam just watching this and being like, obviously Cam, after this interaction, knows that Nona went to go see the broadcast. Like, how could you not? It's kind of like thinking that your parent has no idea what's going on, but that whole time they kind of knew what you were doing and they just like weren't going to confront you about it,
Huh. Yeah, I hadn't even thought about that. I thought that they had actually hidden it because Pal gets so mad that she didn't tell them about the broadcast. But, I mean, who knows?
Yeah, but right now it's Cam kind of observing this. So who knows what Cam decides to, like, relay to Palamades or not. But, like, how could you not see Nona kind of scheming with her friends? Clearly they're not whispering that well. These are, like, kids, So, but she chooses not to really say anything and just kind of watch and listen. And so the kids are all kind of debriefing, and then Hot Sauce shows up with the angel, and right. Camilla and the angel shake hands. Mm-hmm. And with that handshake, I think Camilla is thanking the angel for driving Nona home, and the angel's like, yeah, don't worry about it. And then invites Cam and Nona up, and instead of saying no, they actually do all go up. One other really funny moment here is that the angel says to Cam, like, I met your partner.
Yeah.
And she's referring to Crown, and Cam's just like, what? But also doesn't really say anything.
Yeah.
So they go up to the classroom, and Camilla/Palamades sits down at a desk.
I thought it was Pal at this moment because it just seems like such a Pal thing to do, is just to like immediately get in the desk and be like, all right, class is starting. It just seemed totally. Very, very, very Pal. But I guess they're both sixth house, so they're used to desks.
Well, and throughout this whole scene, it's not like totally evident at what point they switch, right. Like in different moments. And so, because they do switch.
Yeah, in most of the scene, I'm pretty sure it's Pal. And in most of it. But Pal, at this point, it could still be Cam. So,
yeah.
They're talking about the broadcast, and the angel is asking if their families are all right. And Beautiful Ruby starts talking about Sweetie. And I guess Sweetie's his mom. And the angel's like, you've never called your mom by her name before. And Beautiful Ruby's pissed because his mom wants to just let the 9 houses take over again because it's safer. Anyway, Sweetie's obviously a another direct translation in Nona's mind. And I tried to use this to figure out Beautiful Ruby's actual name, but I can't. It turns out that the sweetie there's so many names in so many different languages that mean sweetie. So it didn't really help. There doesn't seem to be like a super good answer to what Beautiful Ruby's name could be. Maybe just 2 names.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like we spent some time trying to figure that out during our reaction, and we were just like, nah, whatever.
Yeah. Yeah, and meanwhile, like Born in the Morning, there are like 70 billion names that mean Born in the Morning.
Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, who knows what the actual names are. But Beautiful Ruby is pissed, and he's calling his mom Sweetie, which is kind of funny. But the angel's giving them really dope lessons, like pay attention to what people do, not what they say. People just say whatever they want. It's so easy to open your mouth and let words come out.
Yeah. And Hot Sauce is being like a little bit cheeky and it's like, well, so if someone says I'm a necromancer, should we wait around to see what they do next? And the angel is basically like, no, like don't fight the necromancer. You should just run. You don't want to find out what they're going to do.
Right.
And Honesty then asks the angel if they are scared of necromancers. And the angel says, terribly, I was born on Lemuria, you see. And we talked a little bit about Lemuria in our reaction episode. Lemuria is mentioned throughout literature, especially like science fiction and fantasy stuff. Mm-hmm. I'm reading The 10,000 Doors of January right now by Alex E. Harrow, and Lemuria is casually mentioned in there. And of course, we have no idea what happened on Lemuria, and neither does Nona, Cam, or Pal. And I think Cam/Pal asks the angel what happened on Lemuria, and the angel tells us.
Yeah. You think I should just read this whole thing? It's so good. There's so much information.
Yeah, why don't you read the passage and then we'll go through and annotate it over audio, because it is really interesting and like we get a ton of good information here.
Yeah. So Pal actually asks what happened on Lemuria. And the angel says, the usual, it had been under contract for a long time. I mean, we were the 3rd settlement wave. They built the crescent in the bones of 2 other cities. You couldn't dig up anything without finding remnants of a people we'd never known. The microbial population didn't show signs of serious decay until the moment before the sea went anaerobic. The things crawling out of there, they seemed to mutate all at once. The houses pulled support, said they'd prep us for an early move, but they left minimal forces in the barracks. We dug up old caches of materiel and used them on the mutants from the sea, on the animals as they changed, on one another, on the houses when they saw what we'd gotten our hands on and came back to take control. Blood of Eden was there too, you know. And in the end, the houses won and most of us surrendered and we were moved. 2 moves later and I'm here. There's still a facility on Lemuria, of course. A decade later, the houses made it safe for geopolymer refining. It must be desolate. There's a lot in here.
Yeah. There is a lot in here, but zooming out on the whole, what is being described is a pretty standard, I think, pattern for this universe that the houses are part of. Like, this is what happens to planets when they are killed and when people live on them. And so I think Lemuria was a particularly gruesome account. And it kind of reminds me of in Harrow the Ninth, when Harrow is going to kill a planet, and that's when Harrow ends up encountering Camilla. Mm-hmm. We actually hear a little bit about what happens to dead planets and how the living creatures on the planets, they mutate, right? Because everything is dying. And so when we're talking about like the microbial population here, didn't show signs of serious decay until the moment before the sea went anaerobic. Mm-hmm. Meaning like there's no oxygen. Like anaerobic bacteria doesn't need oxygen to survive. And so it's kind of like the opposite of how we function, how mammals function.
Yeah. My question here was they're talking about the remnants of people we'd never known. And I was wondering, so what happened was the 9 houses found this planet, obviously populated by the descendants of the billionaires who left.
That's not totally confirmed. We don't know who it was populated by.
It's not. So it could be, who knows, but they came, they conquered it, they flipped it, or at the very least they flipped it. I think conquered it, put it under contract, and then, you know, maybe just like blew up those cities, or like those cities were destroyed over time and they kept on sending refugees there. And then when the angel was there in this very specific window, that's the moment that the planet, like the flipping of the planet, had its eventual effects, which were basically like everything
Right.
became a Thanergy mutant.
Right.
And what's interesting here is that the houses pulled support. So I guess they like couldn't handle whatever was going on. Presumably just these crazy creatures like coming out of the sea. And so they left the planet's population kind of to their own devices, and they dug up old like military gear from previous civilizations that lived there and used them on, you know, the mutants, the animals, on each other, on the houses. And then she says the Blood of Eden was there too, you know. And I am just like the proximity of Blood of Eden being mentioned right here. It makes me wonder if this was the moment, if not one of the moments, where Blood of Eden gets their hands on nuclear warheads, the ones that they used to blow up all those ships at the beginning of Harrow.
Yeah, totally possible.
But yeah, it's interesting because sometimes I'm like, where does Blood of Eden get like, yeah, some of this like old weaponry stuff? And, you know, probably some of it got dug up from old. We're still talking 10,000 years, which is huge. That covers all of the civilization, like major civilizations of humanity. So who knows what's been happening over that long of a span of time. But I wondered if that's where they got those.
Yeah. Yeah, it's funny. Learning about Lemuria reminds me of the conversation that Judith and Coronabeth had in As Yet Unsent, where they're kind of arguing essentially about the like morality of the houses coming in and conquering and flipping planets.
Right.
And I think that Judith says something like, the impact of this doesn't happen for centuries or whatever. And Corona's like, it's still really shitty.
Yeah.
Like, that's horror. It doesn't matter how long it takes. And this is an example of that, right? Like, even if the immediate civilization doesn't see the direct impact of what it means to flip a planet, eventually the people who live there do see the impact of that. And that is, what happened to the angel and everyone in that generation.
Right.
Yeah, what a sad horror story here.
Yeah. This is also where the angel confirms that her training is in veterinary medicine, and she's been learning human medicine by working with humans in the clinic, but she's a vet by trade and was the head of a zoo, of all things, on Lemuria when all this was going down.
Yeah. It makes you really wonder, and I know we're going to get there in Alecto, but it really makes you wonder at what point the angel becomes the angel. Like, at what point they become the messenger. I feel like with this information, MSN didn't pass on whatever message to the angel until this happened on Lemuria or after. Just because, like, why would the message get passed on to a veterinarian? What about this person made them significant enough to be the messenger? It's like just such a big question that I have.
Yeah. My big question is, why is it MSN and why is it AIM? I just hate
I love
that.
it.
Nope.
Because what else would it be? What else would it be?
Anyway, they move on and the angel shows the kids a map of the city and points out kind of the most dangerous places and where they should go if shit goes down. And Hot Sauce has picked out this spot for them to go in case of an emergency. So they're not really doing school. They're just kind of like doing emergency planning.
Which is very practical and useful. Imagine if we learned practical and useful things in school.
I know. The angel's really the best. So lovely and helpful. I thought it was interesting during this whole bit that Pal stays seated and is just staring intently at the angel. So at some point during all of this, Pal has realized that there's something going on with the angel. I'm not entirely sure how, because he hasn't touched her, but...
Well, the handshake. I think that with Cam's handshake... Because here's the thing, is that Camilla had told Nona that it was actually Palamades that wanted to thank the angel for driving Nona home. So it's also possible that they changed, and it was Pal was the one to shake the angel's hand, not Camilla, and then they changed back. I think it was that touch that made them that made Palamades realize that the angel had something going on. And this is also reminiscent of the moment where Palamades realizes that Dulcinea is actually Cytherea, where he's like kind of lurking in the back of that room, like touching the paint on the wall.
Yeah.
It's like this scene like is very similar, where Pal is just like totally silent in the back, putting everything together.
Yeah. Yeah. He's definitely ruminating. He's realized something. It's kind of at this moment that the lights go out. They kind of come back on again as the generator kicks in. And the angel's like, well, I guess that's it. School's over. The generator doesn't have very long. They go and clear things out from the fridge. And Nona organizes all the drawings from the day before and brings them to the angel. And this is the moment where the angel looks at Nona's drawing and just seems totally shocked, blown away. And yeah, Nona doesn't know in this moment what the deal is.
Yeah. And like while the angel is collecting these drawings, the angel's like, oh, we're going to let people take these home. And I think Nona asks, are we never coming back?
Right.
And the angel is like, everything's changed now. So who knows? We've got responsibilities. And the angel uses pronoun like we've, like this, a different pronoun. Not like I've got responsibilities, but we've got responsibilities. And Nona says, I thought you were your own boss here. And the angel says, I have a lot of bosses. Nona asks her how many, and the angel says millions.
Yeah.
So this is like, whoa, what?
Yeah. Millions, like all of Blood of Eden or all of humanity outside of the 9 houses. But yeah, the angel is really, answering to some people. Answering to humanity, I guess.
Yeah, carrying the weight of not the world, but the universe on her shoulders or inside her or what have you. But so there's this awkward kind of moment, right, where the angel is shocked at Nona's drawing and then kind of like pretends that everything is fine.
Right.
And they go about their business. And in that time, kind of all the kids get together to say goodbye to each other and to part ways. And as they go to leave, Born in the Morning shows up, which is just so cute because now the gang's all here and they're able to say goodbye as a group. But, we learn that Born in the Morning is late or is here just for a little bit because their dads have joined up, which we can assume to mean joined Blood of Eden.
Right.
Anyway, they all put their hands in, super cute. They like make jokes. Kevin's really cute.
Kevin!
And then they go off. They go off and Hot Sauce and Nona block the door with a chair and go back upstairs. And so that's, I don't know, I felt really sad after that scene.
Yeah. Well, first read through, you don't realize that this is the end for the gang, but it really is the last nice moment that they all have together.
Yeah.
And that's the end of chapter 17.
Yeah. And with chapter 18, we kind of transition into like total chaos.
Oh my God, I know.
And it all starts with this fucking drawing.
I know. It's a little bit weird. It's Hot Sauce, Nona, the angel, and Pal. They're the only people here at this point. The angel asks Hot Sauce to go turn off the generator, I think just to get her out of the way. And the angel asks Nona to come over and talk to her, and Pal sort of follows along as well. And there's this weird moment where Pal pretends to fall on the angel in order to touch her, which, we know Pal and Camilla, and we know certainly not Camilla, but also Pal are not, super clumsy people.
I don't think there was ever a more careful pair.
Yeah, for real. And it turns out the angel wants to ask Nona about her drawing. This is the moment where we get sort of the little passage that the fandom has really, really latched onto and has a lot of theories about. I mean, it is not sort of a make or break piece of information to know what this thing is, but I think the general fan theory is that it's an elephant, which seems to make sense. All that we know is this is what Nona says. See these things? They're its ears. This thing is its nose, and you can't see it because I didn't draw it, but the mouth is under here. When it was first born, it used to live in a river, but then it got cold, so it had to get large. I know the legs can't rotate, but you don't think that's silly, do you? So, I mean, it could be, you could probably make the argument for many, many creatures. But I like the elephant theory. Seems to make sense. It's funny, like my biology degree this is the first time it's ever been useful, but I do remember that new evidence when I was in college, actually, that elephants did spend or had been water dwelling creatures much later than people thought. So maybe that's what this is talking about.
Yeah.
But also, I don't really know.
Yeah. What animal it is less important than the fact that it's an animal that Nona should not know exists.
Right.
If she is just a normal human being right now of this generation. And that is because the angel says this is a cradle creature and that she learned about this only because she studied zoology on Miro, which I guess is like another planet. It's interesting because I think Miro, there's like an artist named Joan Miro. There's also like I think a sculpture named Miro, and we know that Blood of Eden at least names things after some sort of like cultural reference from the before times. But regardless, is that the angel knows what this is because she's seen a picture of it.
Right.
And it was like kind of underground. It seems like it was kind of a rebellious sort of underground thing, cradle creatures, like to learn about them. And we know the cradle is the earth. And so, big old hint here that Nona is the earth.
Yeah.
Because how else would she know what this animal is? And I kind of wonder if in this moment something really clicks for Palamades about Nona as well. This is information that Palamades also didn't have, until this moment. And so this is kind of like a big reveal.
Yeah, for sure. So the angel is disturbed that Nona knows about this, but she quickly kind of gets off of that because Palamades then makes it way worse when he approaches the angel. He takes off his glasses. Palamades asks the angel if she ever got any medical care from the 9 houses on Lemuria or anywhere else. And this obviously freaks out the angel. Noodle starts growling, and the angel uses that Noodle's growling to make an excuse to leave the room and put him in the kitchen, I think.
Well, there's something just kind of interesting about Noodle growling.
Uh-huh.
And I'm only calling it out because I suspect that Noodle is actually quite important and that we've been downplaying Noodle in this book. But when Palamades asks this question, Nona kind of glances at Camilla / Palamades when he asks this question just to confirm that it's Pal.
Right.
And when Pal asks this question, he actually tells the angel that he doesn't mean her any harm.
Right.
But what's written here is, I don't mean you any harm, but a weird high-pitched whirring had started at the vicinity of his ankles. And that's from Nona's perspective. And I'm so curious about that, if it's just something that Nona can sense. But clearly Noodle can sense something. And I wonder if it's actual necromancy that Nona is sensing, that whirring at his ankles. And similarly, I kind of feel like Noodle can sense necromancy as well, potentially.
I thought that whirring was just Noodle's growling.
No, there is, but a weird high-pitched whirring started at the vicinity of Palamades' ankles. Noodle had gotten up from the basket and the hair at his flanks was standing up as though it had been electrocuted, and he was growling. I thought those were two different things.
Huh. Maybe.
Because Noodle barking at Pal, when Pal is clearly trying to keep a really calm energy and be I don't mean you any harm, Noodle senses that something is amiss. And I feel it's some sort of, I feel there's a thing here, but
right.
That's just my theory.
Interesting. Mysterious Noodle. The angel, I think when she goes to put Noodle in the other room, that's when she makes the call, right? Yeah. So while she's in there, very briefly, she sends some sort of signal for whoever is watching the building to basically attack and take out Pal. And then she comes into the classroom again. She opens the window to let the blue light in, which I think was an attempt to try and, if Pal was a necromancer, to freak him out and cause him to go crazy. But obviously he's not affected, neither is Nona. And they have this weird tense back and forth where the angel's well, my colleague thought you were a prostitute, and Pal's I'm not, and he's do you know that the kids call you the angel?
Yeah, it's like a very weird dialogue. It's like basically the angel trying to buy time.
Uh-huh.
I think the angel called for Palamades to get shot.
Mm-hmm.
And so the angel's just kind of like biding time, just trying to distract Pal until, their people can take care of him. But Palamades is like, this line of questioning is interesting.
Right.
So he really suspects something here.
Uh-huh. Yeah, definitely. The angel says that she does know about their nickname for her, and she says that they've come up with a very strange take on my nickname. It's that hot sauce's fault, I'm afraid. She's overheard a couple things that she doesn't understand. I thought it was interesting because someone wrote in, Twitter user Nothing's Monstered, to say an angel and a messenger. The word angel comes directly from Greek. So it's
Angelos.
Yeah. So thanks for that tip. But I wonder if this was, sometimes they call her the messenger, and I'm wondering if this is like hot sauce's translation of the messenger into the angel.
Yeah, totally. Because we know that hot sauce has like been around the angel at the clinic,
Right.
So presumably there's like Edenites coming to the clinic.
Mm-hmm.
And so hot sauce is not stupid. Hot sauce is like trying to pay attention to everything. And she's a kid. So people also just like assume kids don't actually hear things, but they pay attention to every single word that is being said. So
Yeah.
But this was a cool play on words and, again, very Tamsyn Muir thing to like play with language like this.
Yeah. Pal is pretty desperate. He's like, what is the implant? Please, we've only got so much time. And he takes a step towards her, and the angel's like, whoa, 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 step back. I'll run away if you come closer, and you can try and get what you can from my dead body. But she says, if you're this good, you might have an inkling that my dead body is designed to deny you answers. So she has been modified. I don't know what this means, but it's crazy because Blood of Eden hates necromancy so much, but it's obvious that necromancy has been done on her in the biggest way.
Yeah.
She has necromancy in her bones. She is necromantic. Like, she doesn't have necromantic capabilities necessarily, but like, it's just interesting that they abhor it so deeply. And yet, their angel, their messenger is carrying some sort of necromantic thing.
Yeah, totally.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think Palamades asks the angel, like, what do you think I am? And the angel says, well, obviously you're a lictor.
Right.
And Pal denies this, and then Pal swears on the life of Camilla Hecht that he is not a lictor. And that's when chaos breaks out. Basically, hot sauce opens a door, and then, again, we're reading this from Nona's perspective, and Nona gets shot. But the writing in this is so cool because it's not like Tamsyn writes, and Nona gets shot. It's like everything goes black, and it's basically imagining what it would feel like if you got shot and were still alive for the healing, for like the way that the bullet tears apart your body and then your body kind of heals itself.
I know.
It's wild. But Nona blacks out, and then as she is waking up and like not leading on, like not showing that she's awake, she hears a quote unquote unfamiliar voice yelling at someone. Mm-hmm. And this is the wonderful voice that Moira Quirk based on, I think, her gym teacher of Pash.
Right.
And it's Pash having an argument with the angel.
Right. And when I was making notes on this section, I literally was like, I could go line by line and make like a page of notes every line. There's so much in here. I feel like it's easy to just say like kind of what you can infer from this conversation. It's very funny. Pash is like the most foul-mouthed, bombastic, just intense human being. And it seems like the angel called Merwing, who were watching the building, to kill whoever she was with. So Pal. And they've realized, or Pash has come up, because Pash is the angel's bodyguard, and Pash has realized that Nona and Pal are Nona and Cam, who Pash has met before. for numerous times, presumably.
And who Pash is like, fuck, man. Like, this is like worlds collide.
Yeah, like you just got the Lichter Project shot. What?
Yeah, I think one of my favorite lines in the book, which is like really vulgar, comes from Pash when Pash is essentially on the walkie-talkie with Mervwing trying to cancel the Angel's order. I think Pash says, "Don't you hang up on me, you motherfucking king-making piece of shit. I will rip off Hope's head and shit down his neck." Like,
oh my god,
it's so vulgar, and I thought it was really funny.
It is really funny. Pash is really, really funny, and she's just like freaking out at the Angel. And it's funny because I think the Angel's probably used to like some level of special treatment because she's someone important, right? But the Angel is also like, how could I have known that I was teaching your cell's fucking experiment or whatever? Like, you didn't keep me in the loop. And Pash is like, well, you never let me within 100 meters of this place. I couldn't put it together. And like, there's just been some miscommunication. It's also here that it's confirmed that the apartment that they live in is a Blood of Aiden safe house. It's literally said. I feel like we've been like, maybe it's a safe house, but it's they just say it right here.
Yeah. I think too, what's really well done about this whole dialogue is like, they're also fighting about the bureaucracy, one, of intelligence levels. So, like, who's privy to what information? And then also in Pash's exchange with Mervwing, it's also all about bureaucracy and, like, policies. Like, everyone's trying to use these different protocols to, like, get what they want. Mervwing is trying to be like, well, you called it, so we have to do it. And the Angel's like, you can't take any shots in my presence or there's going to be a tribunal. And Pash is, you know, like, it's like all of these rules that they have in this bureaucracy. It's just like total chaos. And let this be a lesson that bureaucracy just causes chaos. Bureaucracy is no good for anyone. But it's like, there's so much confusion. On top of this, I think Pash in this argument is like, Merv went mental on them yesterday, referring to the call that Nona made, the radio call that was not real, but like clearly that sent off a whole bunch of events.
Right, because the call was 2 days ago. So she made that fake radio call. And then the next day is when they get taken to Blood of Eden's whatever, and they meet We Suffer. And then that same day is when, this is crazy, but what happened that day is that Crown then took Nona to school, then Nona went to the broadcast. So a lot happened yesterday. So I guess Mervwing was like, well, you called Crown in. You're trying to like bring your own people into this. We're watching the Angel. This is our thing.
Yeah.
And they're getting threatened by what they are perceiving as Tessafon Wing's attempt to co-opt control of the Angel/Nona situation by bringing Crown in. It's crazy.
Yeah, it's basically just like a bunch of coincidences.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know. If you believe in fate, then maybe it's not coincidence. But it is this funny thing where it's like all these coincidences happened that caused just total miscommunication and chaos. But at the end of the day, Mervwing is just looking for an excuse to take over. There's been different factions fighting with each other, in particular Mervwing and Tessafon Wing. And so this is the excuse that they needed to kind of start a coup, essentially, which is what Pash accuses them of doing.
Right. Yeah. And it seems like they won't even listen to the Angel. Yeah, it's a mess. And Nona is hearing all of this while a bullet is coming out of her head. There's a really gross part where she spits out some brains that I hate.
Yeah. Ugh. Yeah.
This is the part where I'm really bad with blood in general, so I'm just like, nope.
Yeah, the gore is not necessarily for me, although it's funny. When I became obsessed with these books, I kind of went in a direction where I started reading like a little bit more horror.
Yeah.
And gore is just kind of comes with it. And for me, it's kind of like fight scenes in other books, not these that I kind of glaze over. It's like with the gore, I'm kind of like, nah, I don't need to know all that. That doesn't bring me joy. So
yeah.
So if you want details about how that is described, this is not the podcast for you.
I like when the bullet does exit and she hears a clink on the ground. It just pops out.
Yep.
And at the end of this argument between the Angel and Pash, they're talking about how they're going to get out of the situation because Mervwing is coming for them and they don't want Mervwing to take the Angel. There's definitely some power dynamics at play where, like, if Mervwing had the Angel, they could use it as a bargaining chip. That's what it seems like, at least.
Yeah.
And Mel, I love this bit. When Pash goes, she's like, I'm going to deadhead these two. So she's going to go cut their heads off. And the Angel is like, that's just superstition. And I'm realizing that this is the first moment where we could maybe infer that Pash is Wake's niece, because Pash says, Auntie always said it was 90% superstition, 10% for the fun of it. That's Wake. So her aunt is Wake. This is something her aunt used to say. She also says something about, like, not with my pedigree, like she wouldn't get shot.
Well, the Angel basically is like, if you discharge a firearm with me in the room, you'll get court-martialed and hanged. So, which also says a lot about who the Angel is, right?
Yeah,
and then
real.
I think Pash says everyone's too busy for bureaucracy and kind of gets on her high horse, like, I can get Suffer out clean. If I play this right, no one will know anything. Mm-hmm. And the Angel's like, get over yourself, essentially. Like, you're going to get yourself shot. And Pash says, well, not with my pedigree.
Yeah.
So Pash is a very humble character.
So this is just chaos. I feel like, yeah, there's a lot we learn. We would have to go absolutely line by line if we wanted to go through every point. But at the end of the day, Pash walks over. She's about to cut off their heads. And Nona just sits bolt upright. And Pash then immediately, as like a reaction, shoots her in the chest. And Nona's like, you shot me. She's so pissed. And the Angel orders this other person to stop. At this point, also, we don't know it's Pash, just to be clear.
Yeah, right. The Angel is kind of horrified by the fact that Nona's alive, and then she's like apologizing to Nona. And and this must just look totally insane from the Angel's perspective. Nona survives a head wound, and then while there is literally a bullet in Nona's chest, she's like yelling at Pash, like, you shot me again, that's twice.
Yeah.
She's just like annoyed by this.
Right.
So essentially when the Angel is trying to be like, I'm sorry, Nona is like, her temper is building. She's pissed. Mm-hmm. She goes to look at Camilla, who is also lying on the floor, having been shot. But it turns out, of course, this is not Cam. It's cammed right now, but it was Pal at the time. So he actually ended up like healing their body, and like he had 2 bullets in his hand when she found him. So they both survived this. And this is just totally shocking for both Pash and the Angel. And Pash is really pissed by this. And when Nona comes to her senses a little bit, she looks at Pash, and we get a great description of what Pash looks like from Nona's perspective. And it's like, it's really cool.
Pash is hot.
Basically, Pash is a hottie with like a half-shaved head. Like, Pash is like the blue-haired version of Gideon. That's how I think of them, with a half-shaved head and lots of scars and shit. And Nona is just like immediately, I think, attracted to Pash.
Yeah. Pash is really like serving sort of like leather dyke, motorcycle dyke situation.
Hell yeah. I think Pash has like black eyeliner on.
Yeah. In a military
like goth,
way.
Like, yeah, like in a masculine way. It's like masculine eyeliner. Yeah.
Yeah. Pash is hot, it turns out.
Yes. And what's wild about this is that Nona says Pash shot us. And Pash is like, how the fuck does she know that this is me? As a reminder, Nona has never actually seen Pash's face because Pash has had a mask on or heard Pash's voice. Right. So Pash was like, how the fuck do you know who I am? Like, did Crown squeal? And no, Nona can just like sense body language and shit. But while this exchange is happening, the Angel's like, that's the Crown that you've been going off about? Like, clearly Pash has been complaining to the Angel about Crown, which I think is really funny.
Yeah. It's still a little confusing why this didn't come together when they drove. I think it's Pash driving the Angel and Nona and Hot Sauce the day before, but I mean, who knows? It also might be confusing because Myra Quirk uses a different voice for that driver. She doesn't use Pash's voice. But regardless, this is where it all kind of comes together.
Yeah. Everyone in this room is putting all the pieces together.
Yeah.
That they all had different levels of intelligence. Now they kind of have all of the same information. And it's just funny that in this moment of like, this whole Merv wing is about to like come up. I think there's like 9 or 10 of them. While this is happening, all these people are like just mad, being like, I needed this information. I should have had this information and all of that. And then also, I think Camilla is like, why weren't we told she was one of us about the angel? And Pash responds with, that's they to you. And you're not one of us either, zombie. So again, we get this pronoun play happening. In any case, we get to the point now where, like, there is no calling Merv wing off. And so the two badasses in the room, Camilla and Pash, kind of join forces.
I love
essentially, it's like so good.
It's really good. Pash is so mad about it, but
it has a similar vibe to me. It's totally different, but like when in Gideon the Ninth, where the 6th house, the 9th house, and the 4th house all kind of decide to like join forces. In this way, and Harrow's kind of begrudgingly being like, okay, we can work together. It's like not as charged as this situation because Pash is so aggro, but it gives me the same feeling where I'm like, cool, we're gonna work together for a common cause, even though we have differences.
Yeah,
I love it.
Yeah, it's really, really good. And the angel's just like rolling her eyes, basically. But they set up to basically take on these attackers, which I think Pash had said earlier, there are 10 of them-ish. So keep this in mind. And the angel, I think, tries to call Merv wing off one more time, but they're not backing off. And then this is when Nona remembers Hot Sauce and is like, fuck, Hot Sauce, and like runs out because I guess Pash bundled her up and locked her in the generator room.
Yeah.
So she leaves Cam and Pash and the angel to it. The angel is staying with them because she knows that if they don't see her in the room, that they'll just use massive projectiles.
Yeah. Also, a quick aside is that in the angel's attempt to kind of get Merv wing to back off, she says, we've got my dog in here. Like, how dare you? We've got my dog in here. And I'm just saying, this is one more little Easter egg. I just feel like, God forbid anything happens to this dog. Obviously, we don't want anything to happen to Noodle, no matter what. Even if Noodle is literally just a cute little doggy. But I think that Noodle is important, and that we've got my dog in here was sort of this like one last attempt by the angel to convince Merv wing to back off. And then she ends that plead with like, fine, if you come up those stairs, the lifeguard will shoot you. Messenger out.
Yeah.
So Pash being the lifeguard. So yeah, anyway, so then Camilla and Pash kind of team up. Pash says a whole slew of kind of funny, vulgar things. And Nona finally decides, okay, I'll leave the room and I'll go into the generator room to find Hot Sauce.
Right. And she does find Hot Sauce in the generator room. Hot Sauce, it's not, this isn't said, but Hot Sauce is clearly in shock, like in medical shock.
Yeah.
She's shaking. She's freaking out. She's thrown up and she sees Nona and she is having like a hard time processing this because she saw Nona die. And she keeps on saying, I made it up. I made it up. And Nona kind of starts playing along with this just to like calm her down. And they can hear all this fighting going on outside.
Yeah. And like Hot Sauce is also clearly like very concerned about the angel. And Nona's like, well, she has a bodyguard. And Hot Sauce is being very hard on herself, saying like, I didn't watch her enough. I didn't read the signs. I'm like, girl, you are 14. And we know that in this universe, a lot gets put onto 14-year-olds. But yeah, so while they're in this generator room, they can hear kind of what's going on out there. Lots of gunfire. And that's sort of the backdrop of that conversation around like, I made it up. Yeah, I did. And then Nona's like, wait, what did you make up?
Yeah.
And I think Hot Sauce says, I saw you get shot in the head. And Nona's like, you think you saw me get shot in the head. And so she, again, here is lying to Hot Sauce.
Right. Yeah, she is exhausted from the lying, at least, but she does seem capable of lying.
Yeah.
Eventually, the angel comes and finds them and brings them back to the classroom after the fighting is over. And when they arrive, Cam is sort of dragging a body away, and Pash comes back and says the unit is wiped. So the two of them took out like 10, 11 people.
Yeah.
Our girls are good, you know?
Badass. Yeah, badass.
Yeah.
Teamwork makes the dream work, y'all.
Yeah. What a hot couple.
Oh my God.
Anyway, meanwhile, Hot Sauce is examining the blood on the floor from when Nona got shot in the head. And she's kind of realizing that Nona did actually get shot and she didn't make it up. And she's putting together what that means. And I love that she's like, I saw your brains come out. And Nona's like, I didn't know. I'm sorry. And she's like embarrassed that her brains came out.
Yeah.
Deeply
also, by
embarrassed.
the way, this level of healing is unprecedented. This is like some intense ability that Nona has. I don't even know that the lictors being shot in the brain and in the chest would be able to come back this quickly. Nona is like, you know, because she's Earth, it's like a whole other level. So this is just crazy on so many levels, this level of healing that has happened.
Right. Like she's pretty much impossible to kill. And even Pal/Cam, they, like a regular necromancer couldn't have done what they did. Regular necromancers can't just like come back like that, as far as I can tell. So they all have these heightened powers, Nona especially.
Well, and with Palamades and Camilla, it's like Palamades is actively healing their body, whereas Nona is passively healing.
Right.
Nona's not like, I'm going to do necromancy on my body and heal myself. It's like her body is literally just doing this. So it's pretty wild.
Right. And then the really sad thing happens to end this chapter. It's really brutal, but we see Hot Sauce put it all together.
Hot Sauce is like, well, okay, I saw you die. You're alive. Therefore, you're clearly necromancer. She basically is like, you're out of the gang, and shoots Nona.
Yep.
It sucks. Yeah, that was a bummer. It was just painful.
Yeah, it really, really sucks. We didn't mention it, but Hot Sauce had shown Nona that she was carrying a gun in the generator room. So, yeah, Hot Sauce pulls it out, shoots Nona, and everything goes black. So, it's not looking good. So, we'll end there, even though it's kind of a sad bummer of a cliffhanger. And then we'll finish out day 4 next episode. But we do have a couple of audience theories that we wanted to really quick mention. The one that I really liked this is also Nothing's Monstered on Twitter, who pointed out the angel equals messenger thing. And they say, I don't know what she specifically had in mind, but I'm sure Muir knows the Shakespearean English history of the meaning of tower princes and included this link. And I looked it up. I didn't know about this, but basically the King of England at some point had these 2 sons, one of whom was to inherit the crown. And there was this upheaval and the king died and the sons were squirreled away and then declared illegitimate and they were never found again. And they probably were killed, but they were like in this tower waiting for rescue or waiting for the next move. And they're pretty sure that they were killed in this tower. But anyway, that story and those boys were called the Tower Princes.
Yeah.
So I don't know if this has any specific meaning. The story doesn't really match up necessarily, but I'm sure that that's why.
Well, so we had Abby write in also about this.
Okay.
And kind of elaborated a little bit on what Nothing's Monstered shared. And so Abby says that the name of the Shakespeare play about this piece of English history is called King Richard, in which at one point, and I'm going to quote directly from Abby, in one point, in furthering his plot to get to the throne, Richard has 2 princes murdered and the bodies placed in a wall of a tower for hiding. So this is like what Amy just said. Mm-hmm. And then Abby goes on to say, I think John knows this and thus has given Gideon and Ianthe titles of importance while still having plans to never actually cede his own power and place in the system. So that is like one maybe kind of link between the Tower Princes and like why this would be a significant kind of name for Gideon and Ianthe. And I don't know, I'm like with Abby. I think it's a really cool read on the name Tower Princes.
Abby, you sleuth. Yeah, I love that. I had never heard of the Tower Princes. I've like heard of the Shakespearean play, but yeah, I had no idea. We were like, yeah, it doesn't seem to make any sense to us. But this actually has like a very obvious, it's an obvious reference.
Link. Very, yeah. Also, I just will throw out here, like, I feel like my experience with Shakespeare was high school English class.
Oh, yeah.
And there are so many Shakespearean references throughout these books. If you are a Shakespearean scholar plus locked tomb nerd, come on the pod. Let's talk about it. Scholar. Let's talk about it.
Yeah, that's great. Thanks for sharing, guys. That was some great insight. Also, I just wanted to, this was funny to me. We don't have the name, but someone wrote in saying that making a massive cow wall out of not enough cows harkens a bit to the loaves and fish feeding the 5,000, which is that Bible story where Jesus had like 3 fish and made like a massive feast, which I don't know if that's what Muir had in mind, but I did think that that was very funny. And like a very funny twist on the loaves and fish story into just this massive, disgusting cow wall.
Totally. Yep. I would love to talk about Jacqueline's theory on who the angel is. So we asked folks, and again, this is not the last time, please keep writing us your theories and we'll like bring them in to each episode. We asked a question about who is the angel, who is the messenger. And so Jacqueline says, on my 3rd reread and your episode, I am more and more convinced that the angel is somehow Cassiopeia and Nigella in a Paul kind of situation. I don't have a lot of arguments for it. If I'm honest, just a gut feeling and the they-them thing and the big emphasis on the 6th house. I didn't think of it as the angel being Cassiopeia and Nigella, but I do think it has something to do with Cassiopeia. Like, I 100% agree with you about that. And again, this is just based on like a couple teeny tiny things about the break clause, about Palamades, talking about how Lictor like left and out for them. And just kind of thinking about Cassiopeia's long-term, she was thinking like long game. Right. And so I think it would be really interesting if the angel is both Cassiopeia and Nigella. I think the they-them pronouns could be a good indicator of that. I kind of thought that the they-them pronouns was like referring to just like the many people that the angel is, as this like thing has been passed on. But I don't know. I would love it if this were true. Yeah. Especially because it's Palamades and Camilla of the 6th house who ended up in the angel's, orbit here. Right. Yeah. I also have there's no actual evidence for this. I do feel like my gut feeling I have the same gut feeling, like there's got to be some sort of connection. Maybe Cassiopeia was actually the one that started Blood of Eden or like somehow influenced the beginning of it. But anyway, Jacqueline, great read. Love it. Well, I think we're on board. Yeah. All right. So we have quite a few we have had many other takes that people have written in about the messenger, and we want to cover them as many as we can, but we'll probably do that when AIM is like talking about the message and there are 2 parts left or whatever. But we wanted to just tap that Cassiopeia Nigella thing because we've kind of talked about it in a roundabout way before. Yeah. Well, thanks, y'all. Yeah. Thank you guys so much for joining us, and thank you for your patience with our delays, getting episodes out sometimes as we go through some major life transitions. If you guys have any questions or comments or want to point something out that we missed, send those over to locktoonpod.com or Twitter at locktoonpod. We're still super interested in your takes on the messenger, the tower, and whatever the fuck Jod has done to Gideon. We'll try and go through those as we go through these episodes towards the end of the book when they come up. And we also might do like a big fan theory episode once we've finished Nona the Ninth, if we have time before Electo comes out.
So thanks for all of you guys who've already written in already. We are mind blown by some of the theories we've gotten, and we will try and fit them in where we can. As always, if you like this podcast, tell your friends to listen or rate and review us wherever you're listening to this. Thanks, Olivia K, for our sweet theme music. I'm Amy.
And I'm Mel.
And we'll see you next time here at the Locked Tomb Podcast.